Hey,
Welcome.
thank you. Thanks
We're
for having
here.
me.
Welcome to my first podcast with Tara. She's my first guest, and I'm so excited for this. This podcast is going to be all about all things mind, body, soul, wellness, healing, growth, personal development, really just the full spectrum of life.
Yeah, the full spectrum.
Yeah. And hearing from tons of different people and their perspectives and my own and my stories. And hopefully this will help you guys in your own journeys. And hopefully this leads so many people to feeling heard, seen, validated, loved. And yeah, I'm so excited to dive in. So yeah, today's topic is going to be all about discernment, boundaries, how sometimes you have to make sacrifices in your journey, whatever that journey might be, in order to, reach the level of success or growth or evolvement that your soul is desiring, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether that be in health and wellness or personal development or life or business or whatever the case might be.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but introduce
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. This is also my first podcast. So, two newbies here, and I'm honored to be the first guest and to be trusted to talk about such important and kind of vulnerable topics that maybe you do hear on the internet, but definitely not as much as you kind of do as far as like the masculine side of things. And even what you just said as far as sacrifices, I think sometimes that word is really used in like a masculine tense of sacrifice by getting rid of the things that you enjoy and you love in order to work hard and hustle and grind. But there's also like the feminine aspect of sacrifice, of maybe doing the opposite, of sacrificing and letting go of the structures and maybe the perimeters that you've lived in before to keep you safe, or that has maybe made you successful, in that maybe you need to let go of or start saying no to things that you used to say yes to in order to invite more flow and more femininity into your life or your business. So it's funny because I feel like the word sacrifices is like, oh, hustle culture, here it is again. But it actually could be the opposite side of the coin, which is letting go. And exactly, I feel like what the phase that you and I are in, and probably a lot of people have swung from like the super masculine side of things, or maybe the super feminine side of things, and trying to find that balance or make any shift in your life, needing to incorporate some sacrifices.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Truly letting go, letting go of old identities, letting go of old narratives, old mindsets, truly letting go in different aspects that just aren't serving you anymore, doing what's right for everybody else around you and the greater good of yourself, the world, your purpose, right? Because we're all here for specific reasons, and really tapping into that and who you truly are, your authenticity. I always say that at the core of everybody's purpose is just to be their fullest self, right? And sometimes in order to do that, you have to let go of certain things, right? You have to let go of these narratives that are holding you back or keeping these walls up. Or sometimes it's other people who aren't fully accepting you or don't make you feel like you can be your fullest self, which a lot of the times comes back to us too, right? And the narratives we have or the relationship we have with ourselves. But overall, you have to let go of certain things in order to step into true authenticity, true love, and just be able to express. Expression in itself is an act of like letting things flow and letting go.
Yeah, and it's like such a sign of confidence and trust in the universe, trust in yourself. And just like we show up for, you show up for your job, you show up for yourself at the gym, like that's creating that self-trust and self-confidence. And if you can show up for yourself in an authentic way and realize, if it's necessary to realize that maybe the job that you're working or the business you've created or the friends that you're hanging out with are really only serving a past identity of you. Maybe that was what you needed at that time. And to grow, sometimes to evolve, you have to let go. I think the saying or whatever it is of, looking at like idolizing somebody or looking at somebody that has all the things that you want. Instead of it's like, what did they do to get that, or what did they gain that I don't have? It really first starts with, what did they let go of? What did they release and move on from? And I would say that those are like those sacrifices that can change everything. And it's not always easy. I remember hearing that a lot of like, people can hold such a special place in your life and in your heart, but they also can be holding you stuck to like a past version of yourself. And I always heard that and never actually applied it to myself, though, because it's so easy to talk about these topics in third person.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I know it's not me though, but
yeah,
you know,
right? Like, hypothetically, it'd be a good idea
Yeah.
to release people in your past, but then it's like, well, I've known this person since preschool.
Yeah.
You know, they've been with me my whole life throughout college and into my early 20s. And although I've changed so much and I really don't align with them on a soul level anymore, I've just been with them for so long. I've known them for so long. And that always is much harder to do than it is to talk about.
Yeah.
And that can be applied to family or friends, or a passion maybe, or a business that you've started and you've put so much time, money, energy, maybe clients are involved now. However, if it's identified with a previous version of you that you don't genuinely see allowing you to accelerate to your next version, you will stay stuck there. Even if it's just that one person or that one thing, you'll always have that spot filled, I guess, with something that's kind of like out of shape, you know, trying to put like a square peg into a circle hole or something like that. And you'll always have that like little bit of feeling unaligned. And I think as soon as you trust and have that trust and that confidence in yourself and in the universe, it'll propel you forward. Maybe not instantly. Maybe you feel the full human spectrum of emotions, the grief, the denial, the anger, the sadness, the loneliness, before you feel that being propelled forward into the next evolution. But trusting that your soul is always okay and safe and protected, especially if you just are listening to that quiet voice, that really calm, quiet voice, also known as your intuition.
Yeah, following your heart and your soul, right? Rather than what's safe. Because our ego, our mind loves to keep us safe, and it has its purpose, right? Like, our ego is our friend, but it's all about becoming aware and becoming more in tune with what is your safety, right? What are these things that you feel are just keeping you safe but aren't actually serving you anymore, right? Because when we become conscious of our unconscious, we're able to start to recognize, oh wait, I'm in this pattern just because this is what I've always known. Does this actually align with me though? You know, and starting to ask yourself these questions that are hard because it's scary. And any change, no matter how much we know deep down, it's like, yes, I need this and this is exactly what I want. No matter how good the change is for us, it's still going to be terrifying. Like, so terrifying. And sometimes it's just embracing that fear when you know that something's right for you, right? Embracing the fear, feeling the fear, and doing it anyway, right? And overall, it's never going to feel comfortable. And I think that's where we get stuck in these patterns that are like, oh, well, it's not harming me. It's not like, you know, I'm being tortured, right? But it's not leading you to the growth or the evolution. It's anchoring you into something that you know rather than stepping into the unknown. It's allowing you to stay into the known, right? And I think we build these anchors in our life that, again, we feel like, oh, it's not torturing me, it's not doing me any like harm, so why not keep it around? But in reality, it's just anchoring you down to that past identity, that past self that you've tried so hard to let go of, and you're doing everything in your power to stay stuck there, right? Subconsciously, because that's what our mind likes to do, keep us the same and bring us back to these old patterns that feel known to us, right?
Yeah, just patterns in general feel so safe if it's been done before, whether it's self-destructive or unhealthy, or just keeping you where you're at. If it feels familiar, that will always be our like first tendency to stay there. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. We all have free will. And if that's the lesson to learn, or if you feel like you are aware that something isn't serving you, but it doesn't feel right to quite let go yet, I also respect that. But that, what you said, I feel like you could apply that to everything. And I say that a lot of like, sometimes the best thing that could happen to you would be for shit to hit the fan. Because if nothing's bad, or if it's not hurting you, or you're in a relationship and you didn't do anything wrong, it's just maybe not your ideal soul partner, or if it's a job that pays the bills and you don't go home crying every day, but it doesn't get you to jump out of the bed, things like that. Sometimes what would be even better than is if there was like a big catastrophe. Is that a word? Catastrophe.
Yeah.
And for yeah, shit to hit the fan could be a blessing. And sometimes to let the stagnancy and that safety blanket stay there is sometimes the worst thing that could happen. And I'm sure most of the people listening to this are probably around a similar age, maybe in that like mid-20s, somewhere along there, that transition part of your life. I feel like right now is really when you start to like just start to solidify who you are and what you want to take on to the next chapter of your life, and into sort of that like adulthood, when you are planting your roots and your seeds, and the habits that you're taking on right now start to really get deeper and deeper, and we're just like creating those neural pathways more and more. So if there's ever a time to make a change, it's always sooner is kind of better, or at least being aware of it, and having open eyes for your future and a dreamer's heart for your future, and to not always feel like life is so serious, I guess.
Yeah.
And to still have like that faith in your heart and in your future, that it's okay to change. If your life right now, if today your life isn't exactly where you want it to be, like, we repeat 90% of the thoughts that we had yesterday today. So it takes time, and it takes some awareness and a desire to change if there's something that you're not a fuck yes about. And if it's not a fuck yes, it's a no.
Yeah, exactly. And that's huge. And I think, to go back to like listening to that, like what is your fuck yes? And what is your intuition? How do you tap into that, right? It's like, because that'll be what helps you to make discernment, make decisions, and set these boundaries, right? It's like being in tune with who you truly are and your voice, instead of this safety voice or this fear, right, creeping in. Being able to have discernment between your intuition and your heart and your soul is so important. And I think the way we get to know our heart and our soul is to truly start to ask ourselves these deep questions and sit with ourselves and listen in to our truth, right? And almost always the truth hurts. Like, it hurts, even though it's always exactly what we need to hear. It hurts a lot of the time, and we avoid the truth in a lot of ways, right? We avoid sitting with ourselves and sitting with these feelings and sitting in our shit, right? Like, we will avoid it at all costs because we are creatures of pleasure, and we avoid pain at all costs. And even though this growth and this evolution is exactly what we need, it's painful to our ego. And so our ego is going to do everything in its power to avoid it. And in reality, just sitting with it might be exactly what you need, And getting to know your values is a great place to start for somebody who's just like getting to know themselves, and getting to know like what they value in life. I think that's an amazing place to start. I start there with a lot of my clients too, so that they can start to make these shifts in not only the way they're talking to themselves, their thought patterns, their life, but two, they're able to make the discernment in different areas of their life that they're questioning already. They might have this like wishy-washy, like, oh, should I be with him? Oh, should I be in this job? Like these question marks, right? Knowing your values allows you to be able to have that discernment and make decisions quicker, because then anything that's not in alignment with your values, you can let go of, and you can make that sacrifice. And you're, again, coming from your heart and your soul, rather than this place of, well, this is, you know, what I know and this is what's safe, so I'm gonna keep it that way, you know, coming from that place of fear. So coming back to love, you know, in your heart and your soul.
Yeah, I love that. Like choosing what your values are and deciding. I know for me, I've definitely sat with that question, and the number two biggest values that like I definitely like to make decisions around is understanding. I like to make sure I'm with humans who are understanding, people who are understanding. I like to be understanding myself. And then I also love and really value freedom, to make sure that I feel free in any situation, that I'm having a space of freedom for other people as well. And yeah, coming up with those two. And then if you need to let anything or anyone go, it's like it's not me, it's the values, you know, like sorry. Yeah, like, but it really does, like, all jokes aside, it really does make just a clear boundary of what to say yes to, what to say no to. I remember a couple of years ago, oh my gosh, I was the girl that people would text us like, what's going on tonight? What party to go to? You know, I was like a bartender, and are you working tonight? And I'm going out. And then slowly, as I started to shift and try to get away with that, you know, people would still text me that, and then the answer was just shift of, no, I'm not going out tonight. And then you get those texts less and less. And now I realize I'm getting texts of going on podcasts and getting texts to teach yoga classes. And it's like, how crazy if just the things you say no to a little bit more, the things you say yes to a little bit more start to shift. It's like a video game of, you know, going left and right and yes and no, ones and zeros. And that's just really deciding where you go. However, all of those little decisions that you say yes to and that you say no to play a greater impact than just how your day unfolds, because it's really all this snowball effect.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and where we put our energy and attention, our attention is our most valuable currency, right? It's literally what leads to expansion in our perception and our reality. We create that by giving things our attention. And so when you're giving your attention to things that you know deep down aren't serving you, that's just going to continue to expand in your reality and your perception, right? And so when you start to say yes to things and you start to claim your values and claim what you want and claim your desires, that's just going to continue to expand in your reality, right? Whereas if you're constantly shifted your focus on all of these things that you don't feel alignment with, and you're focused on the things that aren't going great in your life and how maybe shitty your situation is, right? It's like these things just continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And our attention and focus really matters so much. And so just knowing what you want, knowing your values, getting to know yourself, you're putting these things in your awareness, and you're able to truly start to shift your reality to align with that. And I think the truth is, a lot of people just don't know what they truly want. They haven't sat with themselves long enough, right?
Yeah, and that's what it is like you said before, like not really being distracted from your own thoughts and sitting with yourself between social media, reading a book, listening to a podcast, learning, hanging out with friends, listening to music, driving in the car, listening to, like, we're constantly either taking in information, putting out information, even if it's just listening to music or, you know, things that quote unquote seem good or beneficial. And obviously there's a great time for those, but also, when are you not disassociating a little bit from your life? And when are you truly just sitting with your thoughts, and not just the thoughts that are racing and racing and racing, but finding like the gaps between each thought and sitting with the gaps and noticing when you want to distract yourself, when you want to go create a meal or go eat some food or text a friend or scroll on your phone, and be like, what was the thought right before that I suddenly wanted to distract from and disassociate from? And right there, ding, 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 you can find a lot out about yourself. I actually went on a social media cleanse a couple weeks ago, and I kept a journal with me at all times. And anytime I felt that urge to, you know, open my phone and scroll, I would instead write down what was the thought I was just having that I wanted to escape from. And I noticed for me, it was anything that felt just like a strong emotion, even if it was happy. Like I had a best friend in town, and she texted me and was like, I love you so much. Like, what an amazing trip. I miss you. And it was like just reading that and me sitting in that deep love and appreciation. I felt that desire to, oh, let me scroll, like open Instagram. It was like an instant kind of deter, even if it was a positive, loving emotion. So that whole week was really, really beneficial, and I would highly recommend that anybody does that, whether it's social media or if however they distract themselves. And I know it can be anything. And like you said, the ego likes to avoid pain. However, the ego's not exactly sure what pain is, because sometimes sometimes to us pain is, like you said, kind of like the good things in life, and we'd rather distract by doing self-harm, or whether that's through your thoughts or physical form of self-harm that feels less painful than whatever feels threatening to the identity that you're familiar with.
Yeah, that's so true. You know, our ego, again, anything that feels new or feels like change is terrifying. That can feel like pain, right? And it's so easy for us to get in these thought loops and spirals around our desires. We bring up what we desire and what we want, and there's instantly like 1,000 reasons why we shouldn't that pop up, right? And what I like to do is see those as signs to just full send it. Like this podcast, literally full send it. I had 1,000 reasons why maybe I shouldn't do this, right? And I was just like, no. I just created a new Instagram page today, and I had a million reasons why I shouldn't. Full sent it. I was like, these are my reasons why I should. All of these fears popping up right now, this is an opportunity for me to prove to myself that I can do literally anything. This strengthens my trust in myself and actually quiets those fears a lot, because then it shows me that what is there to be afraid of? You know, at the end of the day, I think when we become aware of these thoughts and these patterns, we're able to zoom out and see that in reality, I mean, these are all kind of bullshit, you know? Like, we create all of these fears and narratives that are built around like what other people think of us. You know, what's gonna happen, like worst case scenario, right? And again, is that where you want your attention going? You know? Or do you want to feel confident and secure and aligned with your authentic, real, raw self, regardless? What's more important to you? You know?
Like what's a greater cost? The cost of maybe taking the jump or investing in yourself, or doing whatever feels scary, or the cost of staying the same. And that's up to you and your own judgment. But I'm always a big fan of taking any kind of risk or any kind of jump. Like, we're just on a floating rock in life. Like, why not just see what you can do while you're here and do those things that spark a little bit of excitement? And either way, a lot of people are addicted to the feeling of stress or the feeling of cortisol. So you're going to feel stressed either way. And it can be bad stress. It can be stress because you're not where you want to be, and then you just sit and ruminate in that, and that's giving you that hit of cortisol. Or you can feel the stress of taking that next step and having that, like, oh my God, is this the right direction? But at least I'm going. You know, either way, you're still going to get a hit of cortisol, which usually is some kind of satisfaction to the physical body. And I always support doing shit that scares you and just seeing what happens. And you can always usually go back, or there's always another option. For things to end up as worst case scenario, which, like you said, is always what our mind is going to go to, first of all, is pretty rare. Second of all, you always end up learning the best lessons when those things happen. When the worst things of your life happen is when you learn the greatest blessings and lessons of this life that you take with you throughout the rest of this life and maybe on to the next, if you believe in that. So like I am always a why not kind of person.
Fuck it.
Fuck it. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, overall, choose your hard, right? It's always going to be hard.
Yeah.
And I think, again, it comes back to that feeling of like staying safe and comfortable. That's what's easy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy. And we always want to take that easy route, right? It'd be easier to stay the same. It'd be easier to just not make these changes in my lifestyle. It'd be easier to just continue hating myself, right? And it's like, in reality, no. Like, choose your hard, right? It's going to be hard to stay the same. It's also going to be hard to make these changes, right? And so what do you want? Like, do you want to stay the same, or do you want to put in the work and start to make these shifts and start to create your life, start creating your life rather than just being in, because we're either in creation mode or we're in fight or flight mode, right? It's like we can't be in both a lot of the times. It's coming from a place of lack or it's coming from a place of abundance and love, right? Yeah. And so when we're coming from this place of abundance and love, we're able to create more, we're able to be more expressive, and we're able to tap into our true desires, and that be the focus of our reality, that be where our attention goes. And so energy just continues to flow where our attention goes. And so if we're continuously just staying stuck in these patterns and putting all of our attention there, the energy is just going to continue to flow there. And we have to choose our heart and choose whether we want abundance and freedom and joy and happiness, or if we want to be stuck in fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to go off of, where attention goes, energy flows. And I know we're talking a lot about like progressing and evolving, and sometimes that seems scary, and it is, like we're talking about, but even just like a small step that you could change right now is just your perspective of where you're at. And I heard this thing where it was like, if your flight is delayed, we talk about it. If our flight gets canceled, we talk about it. How often are we like, my flight was on time. Right? It was so great. Everything went smooth. The TSA line took maybe 5-10 minutes. And then I boarded my flight. I got in my seat and I landed safely. Whereas if we focus our energy on those things, on all the things that went well in the day, I got a parking spot, I didn't get a ticket, rather than, oh, I got a ticket. So you can either focus on the things that went wrong, and that's where your energy is going. That's where the attention is going, and that's what's going to grow. Or you can focus your attention on all the things that went right. And those are just like those little shifts that you can make starting today, instead of maybe going 0 to 100 and ripping off the Band-Aid, of just shifting where the attention and energy is going, and maybe then realizing where your attention is going that maybe you don't want it to be going there anymore. And that's like just a tangible shift that I think people can hopefully take away.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. And that's it is hard to start to implement that, but at the same time, it is such a little shift, because again, just those little shifts in your perspective and what you're giving your attention daily, it literally makes the biggest difference, because then you start to realize more and more in your reality. And that's why, like, with clients who talk about all of the things that are happening in the world, I'm like, are you watching the news? Are you watching the news?
Don't do that.
Stop watching the news.
Stop that.
But also, it's like, again, like you said, nobody talks about all the great things that are happening. The fact that me and you are having this conversation right now. The fact that all these families are probably getting together for 4th of July today and they're going to have a great time, right? The only thing that's being broadcasted everywhere is all of the things that make people fearful.
Yep.
Because we, as a society, sadly, like you said, are addicted to fear. We're addicted to anxiety. We're addicted to these heavy emotions that keep us stuck in this pattern of lack and scarcity and fear. And we're here to break the cycle, right?
Which we are here to break the cycle.
Change the perspective. Yeah. And that's huge. And an activity that can be helpful too is if you find that this is like an activity that I love to do with my clients, where if they keep bringing up something to me and just talking really down about it, like whether that be their relationship, their career, their self, their body, their whatever it might be, putting it in a circle on a piece of paper and doing like little spokes, like a wheel, and making a circle around that, and having like 7 or however many you end up with around it. And in each box around it, write something good that's true about it, so that you can start to bring your awareness to 7+ things. Do as many as you can. You can keep drawing the circle around and do as many as you feel you need for any area of life, and just writing that in the center, whatever it might be, and thinking about all the things that are true, that are good about this, you know? And I think that alone can really help you start to shift the narratives and the focus about whatever it is. I know for me, I'm a very visual person, so I love having like something to like look at too. So putting it up somewhere too, so you can be constantly reminded when you find yourself going to those negative places about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like people listening have so many different activities now to get out a pen and paper.
Yeah, get out your pen and paper while you're listening.
Yeah. Yeah, which is very important though, because it takes conscious effort to change. You know, I also tell my clients this, like if you're trying to implement a new lifestyle or a new habit or identify as somebody who does something different than what you're currently doing, be prepared that for the first couple of days, couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, it will feel inconvenient.
It will.
It's going to be out of the routine. It's going to take putting time aside. It's going to take those thoughts of like, well, that's not what I want to do. This is what I normally do. Because again, the body is always just trained and conditioned to keep doing what it has been doing. So in order to kind of interrupt that pattern, it'll take conscious effort. Like take out the pen and paper and do something different. Maybe it feels weird at first. And over time, things like that will just become your new normal. And again, it's saying no to the things you want to say no to, saying yes to where you do want to kind of start like teetering, and either way you're just like tallying up whatever side that you'd like to. And it's not necessarily getting rid of negative thoughts. I think that's really important too, because we can't control our thoughts, and the idea of like controlling thoughts is where sometimes people feel a little disempowered, because I'd say we all have like intrusive thoughts, and we all have stuff that goes on in our minds where we're like, what the hell? Where did that come from? And I don't want to think that. And instead of maybe like rejecting it, just seeing thoughts go by and deciding which thought that you want to grasp onto, and maybe realizing what thought has been going by and that you have grasped onto that you're like, this one isn't serving me. I'd rather let that one go, and maybe grasp onto the next one, or don't, or just being the observer and the witness of thoughts until you feel like you are really connected with your intuition, and as the observer of the witness of the thoughts, that's a good place to start too. Maybe if you're not sure, is this serving me? Is this not serving me? Just observe the thoughts, observe the physical reaction, or what thoughts really grasp your attention. I honestly really recommend, of course, meditation, but for beginners, for the people who say they're not good at meditation, they're just sitting and thinking, perfect. What are you thinking about the whole time? If you are sitting on a cushion or whatever, trying to meditate for 5 minutes, and you're just thinking about work the whole time, or your to-do list the whole time, or the past the whole time, or whatever, that's really valuable information and data. What are those thoughts that have, really grasped you, and just becoming aware, and maybe that there's something to work out there, or to just start to release your grasp on the thoughts so that they aren't so important, or release your grasp on the guilt around grasping the thoughts. If then the whole 5 minutes you're just beating yourself up for not being able to pay attention and not being a good meditator, that's the thought that we should become aware of.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so important, because when we start to, and that's another layer to this, is like as we start to make these shifts, it's really easy to see these things as we're building awareness and start to judge ourselves and shame ourselves. Come from that place of like judgment and shame versus love and willingness to change. It's like that is like the most important first step in any change, because sometimes when we're just completely unaware of what's currently going on in our mind, in our life, and these things, and it's just this unconscious autopilot way of living, when we start to just see things for how it is, sometimes that can send us into like a, what am I, like, who am I? And then it ends up sabotaging the whole thing, right? Because then it's just like we've created even more narratives about ourselves because now we're aware of the patterns. And it's like, we have to come from a place, as hard as it is, I know it's easier said than done, to not be, your own self-critic, right? But overall, coming from that place of love and willingness to change, and just ready to change, and knowing that you're doing this for you, nobody else. Of course, it's going to benefit everybody else in your life, right? But it's like, at the end of the day, just being your number one support system and your BFF and all the things, right? It's like, how would you treat your friend or somebody you love if they were to present these things to you, right? Starting to doing it from that place of love as well. Again, I know it's easier said than done, but
yeah,
so important.
definitely.
To aware of that.
All of this is always easier said than done. And the shame and the guilt can be so real and so captivating and seductive that you don't even realize it's happening. And it's really just the same thoughts, the same ego, but in a different costume.
Yep.
You know?
Exactly.
And but that was a huge thing too, is realizing that bettering yourself is bettering the world. It's bettering other people. It is for your benefit that I choose to be my authentic self, even if that's saying things to you that maybe doesn't feel the easiest to come out or feels a little choppy at first, or starts to trigger that really big desire to be a people pleaser. But it will benefit both to be open and honest and vulnerable, and it will always also then allow the other person to be vulnerable, and now we can connect on a deeper level, or now we can decide that we should connect elsewhere. And neither are good or wrong or bad or better than the other. But honesty and open communication, so much easier said than done.
Oh yeah.
Holy cow. That's something I know I'm definitely working on, is throat chakra, baby.
We've been talking about that one.
Throat chakra.
Me too. And that's a huge, I think the basis of all of this is like coming back to your authentic, real self, right? Because when you come back to your authentic, true self, your true essence, things naturally start to, you're able to make that discernment quicker. You're able to feel things out quicker, right? And you're able to just like not have these walls up, right? You're able to speak your truth and be real, be raw, be you, regardless of what others think, right? And we're all love, right? And so when we come back to love, we're coming back to ourselves. And so I think it can feel scary to come to this authentic place of like speaking the truth, and sometimes like being very direct with people and calling people out too, right? Like you're doing that from a place of love, even though that feels scary. And so overall, I guess what I'm trying to say is like the basis of all of this is just getting to know yourself and your values, who you are. And with that, everything else will start to become clearer. What is aligned with you? What's not? What actions do you want to take? Which ones don't you want to take? What career do you want to embark on? Which ones do you not, right? Which friendships, relationships, any sort of relationship in your life is or isn't aligned with you, right? And it's a beautiful journey to embark on, the journey of the self and getting to know yourself and kind of dissolving this perception of yourself to some degree, right? The narratives that are no longer serving you. And like we were talking about before, letting go. In order to create a new identity, you have to let go of your old one. And that shit's hard. That's not easy.
That shit's hard. And it's continuously changing and evolving, and maybe it's even a little bit of letting go of the idea of self, the idea of identity, and a little bit more of being underneath preferences, underneath identities and past and visions and desires, you know, connecting with somebody else on the purest level of just awareness and just presence with no stronger identity or stronger layer of desires is sometimes that next step. Sometimes it takes creating a better identity, whatever feels like an enhancement to you and your soul. And then maybe one of the steps down the line is also just releasing identity to anything and being open and kind of an undoing.
Undoing.
Rather than a adding. That's a whole different topic.
I mean, I feel like, again, in order to let in make the space for that new or what you do want, you do have to make room for it, right? And that can just mean, like you said, letting go and just being and just sitting with yourself. And like, we're not human doings, we're human beings, right? I love that saying, and it's so true. I think that we can also go into this whole process from a point of ego and like need to, that lack mentality, right? That fear mentality, it can creep up in any process. And so always coming back to love, which I believe love allows you to just be and accept and see things for how they are, while also being able to like let go and let in what serves you, you know?
Amen. Yeah, let go and let in. I like that. Let go and let in.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. And I think kind of a lot of times, sort of how we started the beginning of this conversation was wanting to grow and be better could come from like a masculine side of things. So also understanding that you don't always need to have the next thing lined up or the next thing prepared to gain more, be better human beings. And there's also a lot of value in the mundane and the stillness and the presence and the not chasing and bettering yourself constantly. Sometimes what will better yourself is to be happy with where you're at and what's going on right here and right now without always chasing the next carrot stick. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Well, I love this. Is there anything else you want to dive into or share? I feel like this was a beautiful, beautiful topic.
I think this was great. I think we gave a lot of tangible steps that I would love to hear if anybody, applies them and utilizes them. But I'd say probably the most important thing that sticks out to me throughout this whole conversation was just the reminder to not constantly disassociate or ignore your own thoughts and stillness. There's so much value in the stillness and in the silence, and to embrace that. So I think we could all use a little bit more stillness and silence. So with that, that's all I have to say.
I love that. Yes. A human being. Just be a human being, not a human doing.
Yeah, human being has a lot of weight.
Yes. Well, I love this. And thank you so much for being here. This is so fun. And we'll be back for another podcast next week. Thank you guys for tuning in. And I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.